guys, I'm Maureen. I'm your host of the Sanditon Chronicles. I have been an avid Sanditon fan since it came to the US in January of 2020, right before the worst year of the world kicked in. I was devastated by that ending. I actually thought there was another one coming, and there wasn't. So I have been obsessively watching it ever since. So I've been there since the beginning. I am fully Team Sidlot. I am just in love with their dynamic together. I think they have a great dynamic, and I think that he has the passion that she needs, and it's lovely to watch. I wanted to do this first podcast is kind of give you an overview of what to expect of how we're going to be running things and how we're going to be setting this up for you to enjoy and to watch and hopefully to find more love and gratitude for Sanditon. That is the whole goal, right? So I just want to give you kind of the reasoning why I wanted to do this podcast. And part of the reason was because I can't stop watching it, as I said. But I also can't stop questioning the motivations and the thought processes and the next steps for each character, for each scene. Now, I know they aren't real people. My husband tells me that all the time, that they aren't real people. I understand that. But the beauty of great writing is it evokes sensation, and Jane Austen is the master of that. I understand she only wrote the first 11 to 12 chapters, and that was pretty much done by episode 2. But Andrew Davies, I feel like he has a good relationship with Jane Austen for all the things that he's redone for her. And I think the other writers have really picked up on that spirit too. And so not only is there great writing that has given life to these characters, but the acting is so good that they've literally brought the characters to life. They've literally breathed life into these characters and have given them a name and a persona and an ideology and life. And so I found myself watching the actors go through these scenes, and so many of the beautiful things about the show is nonverbal. And you just want to know, wow, what is Sydney thinking right there? What is going on in Charlotte's mind or young Stringer's mind? What's happening there? And while I know they aren't real characters, the people portraying them have a thought when they are giving, for instance, Sydney or Theo James's signature jaw clench that he does. There's a thought there. There's a reason he does that. And so that was why I wanted to start the podcast. My goal is to share my love of Sanditon far and wide, and hopefully to get more people in love with Sanditon everywhere. Everyone needs Sanditon in their lives. So the podcast, as of right now, is strictly Sanditon. It's strictly interpretations of a Sanditon. It's talking about the methodology and the performances of cast and crew behind Sanditon. It's Sanditon adjacent things and Sanditon referenced things. So fan fiction might be something we talk about in the future because that's Sanditon related. And things like the cast and crew, the crew specifically, things that they've done, they aren't the characters, but they are part of the world of Sanditon. So that's what the podcast will center on for the moment. Now, as time goes on, maybe in the next year or so, and we've shockingly run out of Sanditon things to talk about, or there devastatedly doesn't happen to be a part 2, we might change it up. But for now, that's the goal. That is what we're going to be focused on. Now, on that note, I have reached out to cast and crew to try to arrange interviews in hoping that we could connect with them, not to talk about their personal lives, not to talk about who's married to who or what it's like on the street, but I wanted to take it in a different direction. I wanted to focus solely on their persona or solely on what their role was in Sanditon. I think that they would have the most valuable insight because we all have our opinions, right? We all have our desires for the show, our hopes for the show, the interpretations we got out of it. We all have that. But they lived it, and they were literally, physically, tangibly a part of that. So I think it is beneficial to have cast and crew to come on and talk and discuss. And I know I'm going to give a shout out here. I am in no affiliation with this group, but I love them. It's Sanditon Sisterhood. They on their Twitter handle Sanditon Sister 2, the number 2, and they do Q&As with they have cast and crew both come on there and they do Q&As and fans ask questions, and I think it just gives a greater depth to the show than that is already there. And so I did reach out to some of them, and that is something that we have a few lined up that will be talking with us. And that's something that we want to focus heavily on, but we also want to focus on fan insight. And so where we would be kind of deviating from the norm is also interviewing fans and seeing, in addition to the casting crew, and seeing, well, what did you think about this? And I know that there are groups that talk about this. In fact, I run a group on Facebook called the Sanditon Chronicles, Sanditon Family Fan Club. It's under an umbrella of other family fan club groups, but you see those posts on there. That's, well, what did you think of this scene? Well, when this is happening, what is thinking here? And I would like to interview fans who have insight, but they have no one to talk to. I don't know anyone in my close circle here that I'm able to talk to about this, especially during a pandemic where you aren't allowed to go out. So it's all done online. And I would like to give an outlet for someone to come on here and speak and say, well, this impacted me, or I really connected with this. And so in addition to cast and crew interviews, we would like to get some fan interviews interview you via video or audio if that's what fans are more comfortable with. But we just want to dig deeper into Sanditon. We want to go deeper than has been. We don't want to just ask your basic run-of-the-mill questions. We really want to get inside the character's head. We really, in terms of the crew, we really want to get into why they made the decisions they did, why the lighting is so key in those moments. The music in Sanditon, it's the way they have it played out at those specific moments. We want to know why that was there, the ideology behind it, the reasoning behind it, to give us a fuller, better, more complete image of it. So that's how we're going to kind of be different than your average interviewer, because we aren't focusing on the actors or actresses themselves. We're focusing on the characters that they're playing. We're focusing on the job they do for this specific show. And not that we aren't interested in the actors. I frequently find myself on IMDb watching a movie, and I will look up all the actors' information and have it all. But this isn't about that. So I think that anyone can do that research on their own. But they're also humans, and I know that a lot of the actors, especially in Sanditon, they value their privacy, and we don't want to dive into their personal life. We just want to dive into their characters. We want them to almost be that character for us. That would be great if Sydney Parker just came on the show, or James Stringer, or Charlotte Haywood, or Mary Parker. If they just came on the show, it would be phenomenal to just sit down and talk with them. So I'm going to give you my initial overall reaction from the show and my response to the show, and then I'm going to give you kind of a rundown of what our schedule will look like, what our episodes will look like, how they'll run. So my overall reaction, my initial reaction to the show, I'm a Jane Austen fan, first and foremost. That was the whole reason I did this. I have watched some things that Theo James and Chris Marshall were the two actors who I was aware of before this show came on. But what drew me into it is I am a Jane Austen. My husband would call me an addict. She is my favorite author. My daughter is not named after her specifically. She just happens to share her first name, and her name is Jane Elizabeth. So that was an accident. It's not really named after Pride accident. It was just an incredibly happy accident for me. So my husband thinks that I am an addict, and I would probably agree with that. But I did not even know Sanditon was coming out until probably the week before it premiered. And I just happened to be watching PBS on our antenna. We do everything streaming services mostly. And I just happened to be watching through our antenna regular PBS, and I saw an ad, and I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? So excited. And I watched it online, and I was really bummed I had to watch it one episode at a time. But then when episode 8 came on, it's like, all right, I'm ready for the next one. And episode 8 ended, and I went to go click on the next one, and I almost cried. No way, this is not Austen. This is her heroine always gets her happy ending, always. And so my overall reaction was I could not stop. I did think that there were aspects that probably didn't need to be in the show. I think that the sexual scenes, I don't think there was a real need for them. I usually just fast forward through those. There's only 2 of them that I either don't watch or I fast forward through. But I think that Andrew Davies has frequently kind of pushed that boundary. So I don't think that was wholly unexpected. And I think that there is a certain amount of freedom in mingling your work with Austen's work. I'm a writer too, and so I've written, oddly enough, the 2 fan fictions I've written, one was I didn't like the way the Divergent series ended, so I rewrote that. Theo James is in that. I didn't like how Sanditon ended, so I'm rewriting that, and he's also in that. But as a writer, writing from some, not that you want to change what Austen or any other author or screenplay or screenwriter has done, you don't want to alter that, but there's some sort of intimacy that you gain. There's some sort of real connection you gain when you mingle your own words with theirs, and it's exciting. And that he and the other writers were able to take her work and still make it mostly true to her form. They took some liberties there. They did deviate from Austen a little bit, but it wasn't fully an Austen work. It was only partially an Austen work. And then the rest was somebody else. In fact, I would wager to say it was 25% Austen, 75% somebody else. And so I think that if you are watching this and you have never seen Sanditon, I'm not giving any spoilers yet. I will let you know before we do that. Know that this is not your typical Austen, because it's not all Austen. This is not something that she's done in the past. And even in her writing in those first 12 chapters, she added she called her Milano in the book, but it was a colored character, which had never been done by her before. So even though that this interpretation is not fully Austen, the writing that she wrote, those first 11 chapters, they also weren't your average Austen. So she was starting to deviate from that. And I really loved and appreciated how the screenwriters for this adaptation, how they kind of intermingled the Regency era with Austen works, but also made it a point to bring in some modern day issues, like when it comes to slavery, when it comes to the war between black and white. They did bring some of that, not to the degree it is today, obviously, because it is still Regency piece, but they intermingled it in there almost subtly, and it worked really well together. So my initial reaction was to, okay, watch on repeat. Okay, through it again, watch on repeat. And I found that the more I watched it, the more my opinion changed on even who I thought Charlotte should be with. And the more I watched, the more nuances I picked up. And now I usually watch it in the background while I do stuff, but I'll stop at scenes I love. And just the other day, I actually looked at it. I've seen it, I'm not exaggerating, I've probably seen it about 40 times. All 8 episodes about 40 times. Because now what I do is I watch the whole 8, and then I start it over. And then I watch the whole 8, and then I start it over. And I do that all night long. Can't do it during the day because I have children, so they don't watch that. I don't let them watch that with me. But I found that, and this is with anything, I mean, the more you watch it, the more you're going to catch things. And that's the beauty of this show and getting fan reactions and even the cast and crew, is you're going to get a different perspective than you would have gotten on your own. And I found that the more I watched Sanditon, the more things I picked up. The one thing I will say, and this is not really a spoiler, there is the cricket scene on the beach. And again, I'm not going to give more information on that because this is not a spoiler episode. But there's a point when Sydney or Charlotte was talking to James Stringer, and then she turns and she sees Sydney watching her. Now, at first, I thought it was just kind of I'm going to give you a side profile here because I'm going to show you what I thought it was. At first, I thought it was just, but that's not. When she turned around, he was already doing this and staring all the way at her the whole time. And I didn't catch that the first time. And that may seem subtle, but again, a lot of the nuance of this show and a lot of the really important, beautiful, romantic, loving things, and a lot of the really hard things, the gritty, in Edward Denham, the predator, is nonverbal. And in that one scene, it was just something that I actually had to pause it. I'm also an event planner. I was doing invitations while I watched it on my laptop. And I happened to look at just the right time, and I paused it, and it added a whole new layer. So that was my initial overall reaction, and obviously I love it, or I wouldn't be doing this podcast. And one thing you should know too, if you're sticking around this long, is that I'm not affiliated with anybody else. I just have had this desire to do this since January of 2020. I have had this desire to do this podcast. I've had this desire to rewrite the ending. I've had all these thoughts about Sanditon. And so this is not a new thing for me. I'm not new to the cause, but I am new to the podcasting. This is my first ever podcast, and while I love the Sanditon Sisterhood and I love all the causes, I am not affiliated with them. I follow them, I'm a part of them, I support them fully, and I'll give them shout outs when I can, but I'm not affiliated with them, and I think it's important to make that distinction that I don't represent them. So this is just me, just a crazy fan who is crazy obsessed with this beautiful, almost non-canon Regency piece. So with that, we'll dig into how the schedule is going to be sort of played out, and then we'll say goodnight for tonight. So the overall review, the schedule is going to, I plan on having it set up as this would be the first podcast episode, obviously. And then next week, I hope to go into episode 1. We'll go into a recap of episode 1 and the impact of episode 1. We'll talk about key points there, what impacted us, what impacted me, and what didn't. And then, so we'll have an episode recap, and then we will have an interview, whether it be with a fan or with a cast or crew member. And then we'll have a character spotlight the week after that. And then we will have, I call it a character duo dynamic, where I will pick different characters and how they respond to each other and how they kind of interact with each other. And that will be a week. And so I should have counted this beforehand, but I'm going to count it now. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 different sections that we'll go through. So it'll be episode, interview, character spotlight, character duo dynamic, repeat. So 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, that's 4. So episode recap, interview, character spotlight, and character duo dynamic. And occasionally I will have a co-host. I'm not sure who that will be at the moment, but occasionally I will have people join me for a recap or for a spotlight. One normally will just be me. So that is what the Sanditon Chronicles will be about. I really hope that you come on this journey with me. I really hope that you have fun and you enjoy it with me. I hope that, honestly, I do hope you spread the word. I hope that you share it. I hope that lots of people can see this who wouldn't have normally been a part of this community. And this is a community. The Sanditon community is a huge community that is really driven for this. I can't tell you how many Twitter handles I've seen in the last year that said secondary account here to save Sanditon. And they're just really excellent at supporting each other, and they're really excellent at getting the word out about this show. So I'm really thankful to be a part of it, and I hope to grow this community. I hope that this podcast is enjoyed. I hope that people will come and get something out of this and come and hear something new that they maybe hadn't thought of, or just come here to have fun and come here to interact. And I will also sometimes be doing a live show. That'll happen probably once a month. We'll do a live show just so that we can connect with each other while we're discussing these things. Of course, I'll have a bigger glare on my glasses then, which is unfortunate. I tried to set up my light and everything just so I had the minimal amount of reflection on my glasses, but I'm not sure how well that worked out. So leave me a comment or feel free to message me if you wanted to be on the podcast, if you wanted to be a fan who wanted to be interviewed, or you just had things to say about it, or things that you agreed or didn't agree with what I said. Feel free to reach out. The email for this podcast will be the.sanditonchronicles. That's CHRONICLES @gmail.com. And I will put that in the description on the podcast profile as well. So I am going to bid you good night with that, and hopefully we will see you all in a week. Good night.